Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Oh, welcome to episode 645 for July 13th, 2025, and I'm Jaded Rand.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. The summer is in full swing. Oh,
Absolutely.
My Lord. Isn't it just a great time of year?
Oh, it was a great time for me.
Yes, welcome back.
I can speak for myself, spending some time in North Carolina on the beach pretty much every day, and in some cases almost every night. We went to the beach quite a few times, but that's what happens when you're in a house that's literally not even 500 feet away from the water.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear. For some inside baseball, I guess a little bit, because Brendan was on the show last week, so you might be thinking, what are they
Where did I
talking
go?
About? Yeah, Brendan was on vacation last week, which is why we only had the Jurassic World review. We didn't really have much else outside of that.
Right.
And we had the main show, of course, last week as well. Episode 644, if you want to go and check that out. We did our best movies of the year so far. That was a really great conversation. Do urge people to go and check that out as well.
Absolutely.
But because Brendan was gone all week, and I was gone the week before, this last week was a little bit surreal in my household, where over the last couple of weeks, because there's a lot of prep for me to be out on vacation, then there's prep for Brendan to be out on vacation. So we're having to record a lot of shows in a short time span to prepare ahead of time, so that way, while one of us is out, the show is still flowing. We still got episodes going out.
We were a little burnt
at
out.
a normal rate. And so the last month or so has been crunch time. There's been a lot of prep work, a lot of behind the scenes work. So
especially considering sorry to cut you off, but especially considering when some of those episodes involved best of the year so far. So there's some homework we want to do there. And just before that, we had Adam Kempenar from Film Spotting to do our best of the decade so far, which takes a lot of just general mental prep work to prepare for a show like that. So we're pretty exhausted, to say the least.
Yes. June was a wild month. It was a lot of fun. Having Adam back on the show was an honor and a great time. There was, of course, a lot to prepare for a show like Best of the Decade so far.
Right.
I joked several times that when I was on my cruise, when I was on vacation, I spent a lot of time mentally and emotionally preparing for Best of the Century so far. That was one of the next
another
big
episode we did. On top of that, just trying to find people to talk to who may have seen 28 years later, because you just couldn't get that one out of your head.
Exactly. So it was a wild cruise, a lot of fun. And then, of course, we did Best of the Year so far last week. So, there's been a lot of back end work, which we enjoy. We love doing the show, which all of that to say, this last week was so surreal because I had nothing to do except watch movies and be with my family. And my wife every single day was like, are you doing something tonight? Are you doing something tonight? And I was like, no, I have the whole week free. And it blew her mind.
Serious question, and I won't be offended by this. How nice did that feel?
Oh, it felt great. No, it was nice to just relax. I didn't really have anything
disconnect
to do.
from your co-host for a little bit.
Disconnect from really everything. I got to watch a lot of movies, more so than I typically do in a given week. It was a great time. It was a good relaxer, especially because, again, when I contrast that to my actual vacation, where we had a wonderful time on the cruise, do not get me wrong, but I was equally doing a lot of homework on the side. This last week, I didn't have any homework to do. It was the definition of a true relaxing week where I did hardly anything.
You kind of did, but we have a 1999 retrospective in just over a month, so it was sort of like loose homework, but you didn't have to cram it as much. So it didn't feel as much like a checklist exercise.
Exactly, and I'm not taking notes or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
Which was the next thing I certainly wanted to tease here a little bit. We're about a month and a half out. We usually do this at the end of August, our yearly retrospectives. We've been counting backwards for over a decade now. Last year, we did the year 2000, which rounded out the decade of the 2000s. So not only did we do, the 2000 retrospective, we ended up doing a best of the decade show, celebrating the movies of 2000s. And that was a great time as well. We are now into the 90s, kicking things off with what many people say is the best year of film ever. So we'll have a lot of thoughts on that.
I still have a lot of homework to do, and yet I'm still going to say it. I have thoughts. I have thoughts
as well.
Question. Yeah.
I have thoughts as well. And that'll be at the end of August, our 1999 retrospective. It's going to be a great time. So if you want to join us in that adventure, start watching your 1999 movies, and we'll get to that here. Pretty soon.
You got a lot of great ones. So for those of you listening and you don't feel like it's homework, this is not going to be homework for you because there's a lot of great ones to rewatch, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And that was the extent of my week. If you want to call that homework, I guess I did watch a bunch of 1999 movies, but that was more of a joy than anything else. So.
Yeah. And even though I was on vacation for some of that, JD and I still shared some text back and forth trying to nail down some of our definitions of what a 1999 movie ultimately was. So there was still some planning going on in the back end, despite the vacation side of it.
And that is going to be a really fun conversation when we get to that as well, because our criteria for the 90s, I think, are going to work a little differently than they did for the 2000s, and certainly how they work now.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll get to that here in a little bit. This week's show is going to be a lot of fun. So with Superman coming out over the weekend, it kickstarts this new DCU franchise, this new universe. And we'll have a review of Superman coming soon. But using that as inspiration, we are going to be talking about franchise starters on this show. We initially conceived of doing a top 5. But as many of our listeners may know, Brennan and I share the same brain. We thought maybe there would be too much crossover if we did a top 5. So similar to what we did with Pixar a few weeks ago, for those that listened to that show, we're going to come up with a consensus top 10 of franchise starter films. So we're looking at the first films that kickstarted a franchise, and there's some criteria that we have developed to help narrow that down as well. And we'll get to that here in a little bit, but that will be our main topic here in just a little bit. To start the show off this week, though, I guess as a little bit of a prelude, I do want to talk about Superman and this new DCU. It opens domestically with $122 million. I think it's currently at 217 worldwide, if I'm not mistaken.
What was the budget? Like 230?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm sure it wasn't insignificant. But yes, currently 217 worldwide.
225 budget, it looks like.
Okay. So it's well on its way to making its money, which we all assumed it would anyway. DC wanting to begin this new franchise off on a good foot. And I, for one, am happy to see the DCU start where they have. And we'll certainly have a lot more thoughts as the months and years go by as far as how this DCU will distinct itself to its predecessor, the DCEU, the Snyderverse, if you will. And I do want to talk about here, I guess, the comparisons and the contrast between the two. And I'm not here to have a debate with gun heads or Snyder heads.
We are not playing that game. We are not playing that game.
Not here to have a debate with those two fandoms in any way, shape, or form. But I do think there's a genuine good faith conversation to be had about Man of Steel, how that kickstarted the DCEU, and where we think Superman may take the DCU. And ultimately, they are two very different movies. And I think that's what makes this, again, when you're doing it in good faith, a really fun conversation. Because Man of Steel, it comes out of the gate. It does fairly well on its own. In fact, I think the numbers are pretty similar. I think it had 116 domestic opening, 160 million.
Yeah.
So it's fairly similar, the two.
Man of Steel may be a divisive film nowadays, but when it first came out, numerically speaking, it was not something to scoff at. Like, it did well in that way.
It did well. And I think it got pretty good reviews. It was certainly polarizing, maybe more so polarizing than Gunn's film, but it was more of a success than it wasn't.
Yeah.
In fact, if the DCEU made more Man of Steels and less of what came later, we would probably still be in the DCEU. But obviously, historically, that did not happen.
Yeah.
And thus the reboot. However, given what Zack Snyder did with Man of Steel, where we are with Gunn and Superman, and obviously we don't know everything about the DCU. We don't know, or the DCU, excuse me. We don't know. We don't know the future. We don't know what we don't know. However, just simply given what we know already, what we've seen with Gunn Superman, and we know that he is at the helm of all of this, do we think that the table has been set for a more successful run of these characters and I assume an upcoming Justice League movie that we're probably going to get in the next 3 to 4 years?
Yes,
what do you think?
I think so. I think not just because of the fact that this is a movie that seems to be doing well, and I think it's going to have legs. I think audiences are going to respond to it. I think part of the big reason why this movie will be successful at kickstarting this new DC universe is that I think it's just coming out at the exact right time for a specific superhero movie like this. With regard to Man of Steel, and I'm not going to get into my thoughts on the film itself, part of maybe the issue with that film as to how it tried to kickstart a universe is that it was doing a lot of catch-up work. It was trying to copy not just what Marvel was already doing, but it was also in a weird way copying what Christopher Nolan had already done with Batman Begins. There's a lot of similarities to Man of Steel, structurally speaking, that are kind of similar to Batman Begins. The framework is very similar. And even Christopher Nolan being an executive producer on that film, it's no surprise that Zack Snyder took a lot of inspiration from that. So there's a lot about Man of Steel where that seemed to be following trends, as opposed to what I think Superman 2025 is doing this year, in that it's maybe not necessarily setting trends, but it's capitalizing on the shifting tones that audiences are responding to with superhero movies nowadays. And even Marvel is kind of doing that now. I think we're going to see that this year as well with Fantastic Four, which seems to be going back to sort of the, as some people have compared Superman to, kind of the Saturday morning cartoon vibes that superhero movies maybe used to have. I think there's more of a nostalgia for that more playful tone. And DC Comics in general, they're really known for their diversity. Each one of their central heroes, their comic runs have they've all shown us very distinct tones and very distinct vibes. And I think this is a chance for DC to really capitalize on that. And given what Superman is doing now, I think they're doing it fairly well. And I think audiences are going to respond to it. I think it's going to be a good setter for where the DCU can go, because I think it's following the right path as to what audiences are responding to. So it almost feels like a good marketing ploy in some ways.
Yeah, I am really excited for where the DCU is going to go, and I am more excited with James Gunn at the helm than I think I was previously. Now, I've been a pretty big fan of James Gunn for the most part. However, my reservation really comes down to his Suicide Squad movie, which I don't think is very good at all. I think it's really bad. Its subversions are not nearly as clever as the film thinks they are. And that kept me a little bit at an arm's length with his Superman movie and the direction he was going to take it. I don't want to give too many spoilers here, although if you follow me on social media, you know how I feel about Superman anyway.
Yeah.
However, I will just say all of those reservations have faded for me. And I like the direction that the DCU is going, really for a couple of reasons. One of them, you brought up how distinctive it is tonally to the Snyderverse, where Zack Snyder was really capturing and continuing the momentum of that dark, gritty, brooding tone that came with the Dark Knight trilogy and Nolan's films. And at the time, myself included, many people were praising Snyder's films and the Snyderverse at large for having such a distinct tone, because Marvel, the MCU, was much more playful and fun and diverting. So to have a different path, that made a lot of sense for Warner Brothers and for DC. Really, I think a lot of it comes down to the execs at Warner Brothers getting greedy and too ahead of themselves, which that's been debated and talked about to death. And execution. The execution just wasn't there. Those two things really fumbled the bag for the DCU. What I love about Gunn is that he doesn't really care to distinguish himself from Marvel in that regard. The playfulness and the silliness of Superman, which has been quite the criticism for a lot of people, where they've argued that it's borderline too silly at times. But I do love that he is capturing more of that MCU energy than the previous DCEU energy. That I do think is really fun. Audiences are certainly responding. And also the emotionality that Gunn brings to his films and how that helps complement the silliness. I think that is what has made Superman so engaging and fun for a lot of people. I assume we're going to get more of that going forward with the DCU, which is where I am maybe the most curious with where this is going to go, Brendan, as it relates to Batman. There is absolutely zero chance, I'm sorry, there is no chance at all that Pattinson's Batman is going to show up in James Gunn's universe.
I disagree. I think it's happening. That's where I'm going with this. I think it's absolutely happening. Because I think this is what they're going to do. I think what Gunn is going to set up, and I think this whole path is going to change. I think each movie is going to be about capturing completely different tones that don't necessarily converge. I think we're eventually going to hear that the Batman is retroactively the start of the DCU, primarily because, and we'll talk about this more as we get to our review of Superman, there's an interesting similarity in how they're structured and how both of those movies capture their heroes who are very fresh into their heroic antics, but they're not origin stories. And I think all of these movies are going to function in a very similar way. I think there's a lot of similar path setting between the two. And the way that all of this news is pulling Gunn into the equation regarding the Batman Part 2 and Matt Reeves' script and all that stuff, I feel like it's table setting. It really feels like table setting.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like it might be happening.
Would find that extremely vacuous and disappointing if they did.
Oh, really? Okay.
I do not want that at all. One, it would be extremely feckless from a tonal consistency perspective. I don't think it would work when you watch Superman, especially when they start to converge. If you simply watch them on their own terms, the Batman, that film on its own in a vacuum, fantastic. Superman on its own terms in a vacuum, I absolutely ate it up. Those two characters and those tones together, nope.
I mean,
I want nothing to do with that.
I mean,
however,
you read a Batman comic and then read a Superman comic, it feels like two completely different worlds as well.
I think it depends on who's writing them.
Sure,
because
yeah.
there's a consistency when it's coming from the same writer who is able to capture a similar tone. Honestly, that's what I loved about Snyder's films. Man of Steel, which is a film that I actually rewatched this last week. I enjoyed it way more than I did a decade ago. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination.
I don't hate it. I'm mixed on the film overall, but I think it actually nails the origin story elements in the first half. I think the first half is mostly pretty strong.
That first 45 minutes to an hour, with the Lois Lane stuff aside, that's still terrible.
That's whatever.
You cut that out, but that first hour is really good. Really good.
I agree.
I think it's quite great. And that Superman with Batfleck, because it's coming from the same artist with the same vision, that I think works perfectly. I have absolutely no issue with the tones of those two characters, despite how jarring they might feel on paper. I think it works really well there. Again, my issue with Superman or Batman versus Superman is more so the execution. And again, the whole idea of we're rushing all of this. And that leads to further problems down the road. But tonally, I think it works wonderfully. Pattinson's Batman and this Superman, it's not that. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Totally antithetical.
I don't disagree that it's the opposite. And let me also be clear. When I say that I think it's going to happen and giving some justification as to what I think this Superman movie is setting up, I'm not necessarily saying I want to see that happen. I'm not sure if I want to see that happen. I think as far as my opinion is concerned, I think I'm with you. I don't think I really want to see the Batman and Superman converge, or at least these two iterations of these current DC characters converge. But I think what we saw with Superman, again, we'll talk about this further in our review. I think this is a movie that's setting up that tonal consistencies in superhero movies, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter anymore. We're playing a completely different game now.
Which, for the individual movies, I will have no problem with. To me, it'll all come down to how they converge. I don't see that working. That's a formula that I think is going to fail. And if that is the case, then my perspective on this entire conversation and why I'm glad we're having this conversation will completely shift. Because right now, I think the future of the DCU is in good hands and is going in the right direction. Should they do what you're suggesting? Count me out. I want nothing to do with it. I think that is incredibly vacuous.
I'd be curious to see what they do with it. Hey, maybe it might be one of those cases where this universe is all about separate stories that don't converge. Maybe we'll never get a Justice League movie.
Considering that there's a Justice Gang in
maybe
Superman,
this is our Justice League. We get the Justice Gang instead.
I highly doubt that's going to be the case. Here's the real reason I'm feeling indignant about what you're suggesting. I think it's an incredible missed opportunity, because here's what they should be doing with Batman. And I am deeply in love with this idea. And maybe I'm alone, but that's okay. Given what Superman is tonally, in terms of its fun, its silliness, its goofiness, its emotion, this is the perfect opportunity to bring back the spirit of Joel Schumacher. I want Batman Forever, because Batman Forever in this universe makes all the sense in the world. And I want that. I want someone to tap into the greatness of Joel Schumacher and give us that kind of movie. That's the kind of Batman I want to see in the DCU.
What if we finally get this, this not even rumored, apparently this does exist, this nearly 3-hour Joel Schumacher cut of Batman Forever, and it's retroactively released as the Batman movie for the DCU.
I would love that. Are you kidding me? Yes. I know that it exists. Yeah. I know people that have seen it and have said incredible things. I would want nothing more than to see that cut.
And then what you do going forward, because obviously the character of Batman in some way would have to continue. I know apparently James Gunn has announced that they're going to be tapping into the Brave and the Bold storyline with regard to Batman. And I know that ties into Robin, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not too familiar with the lore there. Bring back Chris O'Donnell. That's how you connect it in.
There you go. That's how you connect them. Yes, I'm totally down for. That's what I want to see. I want to see that zany absurdity in Batman that would connect so well to this iteration of Superman. And you keep that energy going forward with all of the movies. You don't have to make them cookie cutter. I'm not saying make them all the same, but you keep that tonal consistency. And look, the MCU is a great example. And I don't think you have to stray too far away from that. There's a lot of, sorry to bring this back to sports one more time, but it's the comparison that comes to mind for me right now, because the NHL is in a lot of hot water right now. They recently had the NHL draft, and they have decentralized it, which essentially means they're copying the NFL format, but they don't want to make it seem like it's verbatim the NFL draft. So they have to sprinkle in all these new things to try to spruce it up. And it did not go well at all. The first round was like 6 hours, and I'm not exaggerating. It was way, way too long. It was terrible. It was a bad idea. Fans did not like it. The teams themselves did not like how that went.
Right.
Simplify it. It's okay. Copy the NFL draft. It's fine. It works great. People love the NFL draft. You don't have to overthink this, okay? Just do the NFL style. And that's all that I'm saying here. James Gunn does not have to overthink this. The MCU has shown for over a decade now when you keep the films tonally consistent, you bring in all these different filmmakers, you have all these characters, it's worked for them, it's done well. You don't have to overthink it. Keep the tone consistent. When you get to Justice League, it'll all work great. And I think a Joel Schumacher-esque version of Batman, it gives credence to everything that we would see in Gotham and how that would compare to what we see Metropolis to be in Superman. I think that would work wonders here.
The beauty of doing that too, and this is something that I loved about James Gunn's Superman. We'll talk about this further in the review. I feel like we're playing our cards a little bit too much here, given this conversation, but clearly we enjoyed Superman. We can make it as clear as that. But with James Gunn's Superman, it does kind of have that playfulness that we've seen a little bit with Marvel, but it doesn't feel like a Marvel film. And that's the key difference. And I think you can follow that framework of what succeeded with Marvel without it ever feeling like they're just making Marvel movies, but for DC. I think that's one of the biggest things I liked about Superman, and something that I feel like the DCEU was trying to completely not replicate until it started to fail. And it's like, oh, we've got Wonder Woman. Let's officially replicate the MCU. Because Wonder Woman is basically an MCU film set in the DCEU. That's basically what that is. And why it was so successful is that it was very good at doing that. But with Superman, you have a great opportunity to capture that playfulness that may have worked in previous superhero movies in the past, but set your own tone for it that still feels like its own thing. And I think a Joel Schumacher style Batman movie would continue that trajectory quite well, actually. Yeah. I'd be all for that.
I'd be all for that as well. And I do wonder if that is going to be the play here, at least to some degree, because we are getting Supergirl next year, and that is directed by Craig Gillespie, who did Dumb Money and Cruella and I, Tonya. And those films have a lot of what I'm asking for here in terms of how there's a satirical bite to those films, or at least a comedic backbone, depending on the film that you're talking about, but also a dramatic and emotional through line that has been effective for a lot of people. So him coming in to do a Supergirl movie, given what the trajectory of this might be, makes a lot of sense. Then we're getting Clayface also next year as well. Admittedly, I don't know too much about Clayface, but I am curious to see if that continues this trend.
With a name like
the Bold.
With a name like Clayface, I would imagine it's going to continue this trend.
I would think so as well. Yeah.
I mean, for the same reasons why apparently Swamp Thing is being talked about for this as well. I don't think we have anything really confirmed about Swamp Thing, but it is something that has been talked about with regard to the DCU going forward in this first string of films. You can tell that they're going in a more almost literal comic book like direction here, which I think is kind of smart.
Yeah, I mean, with Swamp Thing, James Mangold is attached to that project at this current point. We'll see if that lands. I don't think there's any sort of release date as far as that is concerned. So that's years down the line. That could change.
That could change. Yeah. I don't think anything's really set in stone aside from Supergirl and maybe Clayface, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, The Brave and the Bold was announced, and I know Andy Muschietti, the horror director, was tied to that at one point, but I don't think he is anymore. So I think that's another one that's kind of in limbo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we'll see. Assuming Mangold comes in for Swamp Thing, like I think his Logan film and Wolverine perhaps are a little bit of an outlier because we've seen, like, I look at something like Ford v Ferrari or hell, even Indiana Jones. I think those two films from a tonal perspective are kind of in the vein of what I'm suggesting here. So he's certainly capable of continuing this James Gunn comedic, playful style if that's something they want to do for that character.
Sure.
But again, maybe depending on the character or what lore they want to tap into, that there's going to be some flexibility there. And there's always going to be some flexibility with these characters. But the one thing that I am intrigued by with Gunn's DC universe is that we are not immediately jumping to the same characters, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to Supergirl, we're going to Clayface, we're going to Swamp Thing. Who knows when or if we'll get to Wonder Woman and Aquaman and the Snyder characters. Those might come in whatever phase 2 of this looks like.
They might
DC.
come later. It's funny enough, Jason Momoa is going to be in this new DCU, but not as Aquaman. Apparently he's playing Lobo in Supergirl, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Which, okay, if you were going to take one character from Snyderverse to continue here, that would have been the one. But I really love him as an actor. I think him
I'd
being
like to see that,
any of these characters is going to be a great time. But but that does excite me about this. It was one of the more interesting things about Superman, right? Is that it did feel like we were simply thrown into the middle of an ongoing universe, and we were simply meant to just know who these characters are and their connections to each other. And I do love that the film just drops us in. There's no exposition. There's no setup to it all. It's boom, here you are. Justice Gang has already been formed. Superman has been around for decades.
Even the opening text of the movie is kind of a joke, and being very self-aware and setting up that this is really not a setup movie in some ways.
It really isn't, which again has, that was one of the main criticisms to Snyder's DCEU. But given the state of things now, I think it just makes sense for Gunn to take a completely different approach than what Zack Snyder did. And I think execution is also a big part of it. I think Gunn did a great job of making that work. It could have been a disaster. It could have been a Batman versus Superman kind of situation. And look, Superman is not perfect by any means. We'll talk about it in our review this week. It has its own blemishes, but it is quite effective, and it set the table really well going forward. And look, I didn't love Man of Steel at the time. I have come around it a little bit, and given how I feel about that movie now, it does make me perhaps, like, I am disheartened a little bit that where things went after Man of Steel. It just
because there are great things in Man of Steel, and then there are some things I just don't like. I'm with you. I know we said this earlier, but that first hour of Man of Steel is
so good.
Honestly, probably the best origin story stuff we've ever seen in a Superman movie. I think it's up there. As much as I love the original Richard Donner film from 1978, I actually think Man of Steel nails the origin story stuff better than that original film does. It's when that original film gets into once Christopher Reeve shows up, then that's when that movie really takes off. But in a way, it's interesting how those movies are kind of a reversal from one another as far as where the quality is and what succeeds and what doesn't.
I agree. I think that's like all three of those movies. The Reeve movie is successful in its own right. Man of Steel is successful in a different way, and Gunn Superman is successful in also a very different way, which is kind of, it makes for an exciting kind of trio. And I agree with you. Everything with Russell Crowe is stupendous in that film. It is so ridiculously good. It's fantastic. And I know there's been a lot of discourse around Kevin Costner and the way that character crystallizes. I don't know if it works. I'm still kind of iffy on it, but I admittedly, I wasn't, I think. It didn't bother me as much on this watch as it did previously. And I think it's just because everything else with Costner works so well. That barn sequence with Hans Zimmer's score when he's talking to young Clark. Oh my God. It is incredible, dude. I watched that this last week, and thank God no one else was around me because I would have embarrassed myself. It is so good. And I think that's why, again, there's been a lot of debate even in the last week, 12 years later after the fact, about what he tells Clark there as far as, should I have let them die? I don't know, maybe. Not that he is this heartless inhuman, but he really deeply loves his son and is afraid that people are going to reject him. And look, maybe this is hindsight, it's 2025 talking here, but I think if Superman did exist in our world today, absolutely, I think at least half of this country, if not more so, would fear him and would look at him as an alien and want to capture him and take him away. I think there's a lot of practical philosophizing there that makes sense of it. And I also love that the film is just willing to have those challenges. Not every superhero film is willing to be that prickly. And I do admire that about Snyder.
That's why I at least admire what Zack Snyder tried to do with both of his opening films in that series, especially with regard to the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. Not a great movie. In fact, at a lengthier cut, it kind of doubles down on some of the things that don't work as a movie, but it's at least trying to ask challenging questions. It's at least trying to have a dialogue with itself about the state of political involvement in superhero movies. I don't mind that. I never liked him as a filmmaker as much. I don't think he's as good of a storyteller. I think that's really just the difference.
Yeah, no, for sure. There are certainly execution things that come to mind for sure. And some writing things. It's a little bit of that Gareth Edwards thing we were talking about on our Jurassic World conversation last week. So, I mean, all of that to say, there's a lot to like about Man of Steel, and maybe we'll be having a similar conversation about the DCU in another 10 years. It started off on the right foot, and then it just fell off a cliff after that. Who knows?
I kind of need to rewatch Man of Steel now. My wife and I have been rewatching a bunch of the old Superman movies, just given the fact that the new one is out. She was curious about going to see it. She hasn't seen it yet. I went by myself to see it first, but I might take her to see it in a couple days or something like that. But we've been rewatching some of the old ones, so we might have to get to Man of Steel pretty soon.
Oh my God. I had not seen Man of Steel in about a decade. I saw it, of course, in theaters when it came out. And then there were a few rewatches around 2014, maybe 2015. Not much changed in how I felt about that film then. And then you step away from a decade, you grow as a person, you grow as a film critic. I went back to revisit that film this last week, as I said, and I did so honestly a little bit cynically because you see all this discourse online, a lot of people talking about Costner's Jonathan and the choices that he makes. There were a lot of takes even about Hans Zimmer's score. This is a top 5 Hans Zimmer score. And I'm like, okay, let's let's pump the brakes a little bit. It is a great score, but top 5 Zimmer, that I don't know. And then I watched that movie, Brendan, and I am sobbing an hour the way through it. I'm like, God damn it! This might be a top 5 Zimmer score. Like,
I don't know if I'll be able to go that
be.
far. But then again, I mean, a top 15 Zimmer score is still better than most other composers' top 5 scores. So
yeah, I might be there. I might again.
Okay,
but it's
cool.
It's one of those where I watch the next Zimmer, and then I feel the same way about that score. It's probably one of those things.
Yeah, the man's just good at his job.
But yeah, I mean, when I watched that film, and Zimmer does a lot of heavy lifting for sure, but I think the performances, at least in that first hour, are really, really great. Most of my criticisms are the Lois Lane stuff, and I think that final third leaves a little to be desired.
I remember it being pretty rough, but yeah, I'll see it again.
And I still think it is pretty rough, but it is better than I thought, than I remembered it to be. And that first hour especially rips. It's really, really great.
Great.
And Zimmer, man, he rocks it out.
Yeah.
So
not surprised there.
I'll just say this, the argument is there. Even if it's not top 5 for me, the argument is
it's in the conversation. That's enough to be said about a great composer like Hans Zimmer.
Yes. At any rate, I'm excited to see where the DCU goes.
Sure.
I think Gunn set the table well. We'll see what
I'm very curious. It seems like it's going to be pretty different, which I think it needs to be.
And absolutely. It is for sure going to be different. And I'm very excited for that. All right, Brendan, let's talk about security and traveling. It is that time of year. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. Brendan wasn't traveling internationally or overseas, but a lot of us are traveling in the summer months.
Yeah,
and
we are.
Secure.
Yeah. And the thing with travel nowadays, we live in a digital age, right? Which means everything that we own, everything that we have is all at risk of being stolen, right? We have to worry about this even more so. But thankfully, NordVPN makes us sleep at night more soundly.
Exactly. And it also works at home. You don't necessarily have to travel. You can use it at home as well for those very same reasons. So whether you're traveling for the summer, whether you're at home and you want to enjoy the benefits of all of your subscriptions, NordVPN, it'll help you stay secure. It protects you from prying eyes online by changing your IP address, and it secures online traffic through encryption, making it hard for those that are spying and trying to hijack your data.
Yeah, and we all know that data is seen by a lot of people, whether you know it or even like it or not.
Exactly.
And NordVPN, what makes it great is that it's available for all operating systems, your smart TV, your routers. Going further than that, their Threat Protection Pro feature helps to block additional malware, additional ads, malicious sites, and malicious trackers. It was so good that it was voted best VPN by PC Mag, by Forbes, Wired, Tech Advisor, many other outlets as well. It has been recognized so often, and for good reason. They have 72,000 servers in 118 countries, more coming even from that. Operations are endless to keep your speed great and your security even greater.
Yeah, absolutely. And if that wasn't enough, NordVPN doesn't track your user activity.
Right.
So they're not trying to spy on you either. And if something goes wrong, there's a kill switch that will protect you if anything does go wrong. So it is the best out there for security, for connection on the go. Use our link in the description. You'll see a link there. Click on that and you'll get 1 month of NordVPN for free. Again, click the link in the description, 1 month for free. Stay connected wherever you go. Check them out, NordVPN, and we thank them for their support. All right, Brennan, let's talk about t-shirts and swag and merchandise.
All right, Film Score Junkie, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I'm wearing the Film Score Junkie right now, partially because I just saw Superman over the weekend. We just got done talking about it for a little bit there.
Yeah.
And I have not stopped listening to the score at all. There have been several tracks from that score that have walloped me. It's been incredible. I was putting Andrew down for his nap today as I was listening to that score. Gigantic mistake. Should not have done that. Andrew was looking at me. Why are you getting emotional here? We're just going to bed. It was quite the trip.
Well, yeah, especially after our conversation on Hans Zimmer and some of his work over the past, not even just a few years, but over his entire career. The man, he's one of the big reasons why we are film score junkies.
Exactly. So if you want to get your film score junkie t-shirt, InSessionFilm.dashery.com. You can also see it all directly on the site, InSessionFilm.com/store. But if you go to InSessionFilm.dashery.com, there you'll see the store. Everything comes through Dashery there. You'll see all of the designs that we have there. Of course, we have this one that I'm wearing, the Film Score Junkie one, but we also have a Sinner's design. If you're a sinner like Brendan and I, if you're a fan of the Wild Robot, we have a brand new design. I could use a boost that I wear at any occasion that I can. It is one of my favorite designs that we've done.
He sleeps in it. He wears it to work. Exactly. He wears it to hockey. He wears it to church. He wears it everywhere.
Everywhere I could use a boost. We have all kinds of designs. Again, InSessionFilm.dashery.com. You'll see them all there. InSessionFilm.com/store as well. Either way, it'll get you to the same place. But check out those t-shirts. It really does help out the show. We have Women in Session gear. We got Chasing the Gold as well. Stuff with our logo on it. Again, all kinds of fun things up there. Go check it out. And we really do appreciate everyone's support. Okay, let's go ahead and transition here. We are going to now be talking about franchise starter films. And we're going to be doing a consensus top 10 here. Now, before we get to the top 10, we need to talk criteria. What
are we defining this
franchise? As? How are we defining a franchise?
Yes.
Brendan and I did talk about this a little bit offline. Where I came into this, especially when we were considering this as a top 5, for me, the franchise must have at least 4 films or some spin-off movies, some spin-off TV shows that give it more than just a trilogy status. I think trilogies are a completely separate topic that deserve its own top 5 or own consensus ranking. Perhaps we can get to that at another time. So for me, franchises have to expand beyond the trilogy status. That was first and foremost for me.
I agree with that. When I was looking at the list of options that we had to work with, all great options for us to consider here. But I thought, like, is there a distinction that we need to set aside here when it comes to trilogies versus franchises? Because when I think of a franchise, I think of something really large in scope, really grand. And a trilogy, by comparison, almost feels a little bit limited when compared to the broadness and the scope that a franchise ultimately could be. And there are many great trilogies that we will acknowledge, such as, let's say, Back to the Future, for instance. That first Back to the Future, nearly a perfect movie. We're not going to consider it for this list because that is a sole trilogy all on its own. Heck, even a movie like Before Sunrise, technically the Before series, right? But there's only 3 movies. That's all there is. There's nothing else with it. So
The Godfather, a trilogy, but it's just a trilogy. It's not really a franchise. I don't think people consider it to be the Godfather franchise.
Yeah. Now, the distinction, though, you have, in many cases, trilogies within a larger franchise. The Middle-earth franchise, for instance, is technically 2 separate trilogies, but it comes together for a grander franchise. We will consider that for this list.
Yes.
So like there is a distinction there. And then, of course, we'll also make note of this too. I'm sure you're going to make note of this as well. With regard to, let's say, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, some people would argue there are trilogies within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America. I would say they're not really trilogies, at least most of them. They're more so just separate entries in a grander franchise, that franchise being the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that's one franchise for us there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the MCU, the DCEU, the DCU, as we just talked about a little bit in the opening of the show, yes, all of that operates and functions as its own franchise.
Yeah.
There is no Iron Man franchise or Captain America franchise. We all consider that to be part of the DCU. It's very much what you were talking about there with Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. Those are separate trilogies, but they operate under the same umbrella. Obviously, the MCU does the same thing. So, yeah, we are absolutely considering that. As long as it has more than 3 movies or some spin-off movies, spin-off shows, I think all of that functions as far as qualifies here for this particular exercise.
Yeah.
That and as far as criteria, that's really all that I had here. And obviously we are focusing on the first films in these franchises.
Yes. We need to make that distinction as well, because we don't want this to turn into just a top 10 consensus ranking of movie franchises.
Yes. We are only considering the first films, which is why something like The Godfather rings the loudest, because as a trilogy, there is some argument there given that not many people love The Godfather 3. It is admittedly a flawed movie for sure. So comparatively to something like the Before trilogy, I would take the Before trilogy all day over the Godfather trilogy. As a trilogy, even if The Godfather is in my top 5 of all time. Yeah. So
so we're looking at
singular film.
Yeah. So we're looking at exactly. We're looking at these individual films, how well they function as films, maybe how well they function as franchise starters, what they set up and what comes after. Does it do that great preliminary work to make sure a franchise kickstarts in the right way? And just simply, is it a very good movie on its own terms? Because many franchises became great franchises primarily because of films that came later on down the line. So there's a distinction there as well. Maybe it wasn't necessarily set up by a great starting point. So we're also making sure that that's a distinction here as well.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll note is that we are also considering full-on reboots. A full reboot also qualifies. So, for example, you have the 1954 Godzilla that kickstarted the Japanese franchise of the Godzilla movies. You also have the 2014 Hollywood version that is a completely new reboot with the completely new Godzilla. So that also qualifies here.
Because those are 2 separate franchises. They just happen to involve the same monster in its own way.
Planet of the Apes, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Those are very 2 different franchises, although given where things are going, maybe not after all.
I honestly, I still don't know about that one. Like, I still have a lot of question marks as to whether the new iteration of Planet of the Apes that started with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, is that in the same world? Is it technically? I still don't really know.
Yeah. like there are clues that seem to suggest that it's actually tied to that original franchise, but nothing is conclusive. I don't know. And like in a lot of ways, it operates as a full reboot, but it also doesn't.
It's like, I can't tell if those tie-ins are actual narrative and plot tie-ins or if they're just Easter eggs. Like, I don't know what they are yet. And to your point, we have to see where these new movies go. If they make more after Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, if it does become a full connective series leading into the existing movies, and then it's like, oh, okay, I guess we have to eat those words a little bit.
I know, but until there's conclusive evidence, at least personally, when we were considering this a top 5, I did have Rise in there as a qualifier. I think it works here until we know conclusively. I think it's fair that it operates as a reboot, but in time it might not, but we'll see. We'll see. It's too vague. It's too up in the air.
There's a question mark there.
I consider it a reboot still.
There's enough question marks there for us to consider a reboot at this time. So if it does make our consensus top 10, maybe we just add a couple of asterisks at the end of it with the knowledge that maybe it'll get bumped off in a few years.
Okay. With that laid out, that's the criteria. Now, Brendan and I have to come up with a consensus top 10. Again, this is not a separate top 10. Brendan and I collectively have to consider the top 10 franchise starter films. Again, the first film of these franchises. So with that said, where should we begin here? Where do you want to start?
Should we start with Star Wars? Should we start with A New Hope, 1977? Many people consider that to be one of the best Star Wars movies, one of the most important blockbusters of its time. Not the first blockbuster, of course, that qualifier goes to Jaws just a few years earlier. But in many ways, it was sort of the first event film that capitalized on the idea of event films can actually be a thing, right? So like it followed that trend in a way. And full disclosure, it is not my favorite Star Wars film. In fact, of the original trilogy, it's my least favorite of the three. I actually prefer Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I like a little bit more than A New Hope. But I think just given the legacy of it, this may have to be one for us to consider. I don't know where to rank it yet, but it's just something to at least keep in our back pocket to get things started. Because I know everyone listening here is probably going to go right to Star Wars. And I feel like we at least have to acknowledge that.
Okay, so we're already off on an interesting foot because Star Wars, A New Hope, not in my top 10. In fact,
I don't know if it would be in mine
my
either.
Top 15.
I don't even know if it would be in my top. I brought it up because this is maybe one of those, like when we did our Pixar ranking, our collective ranking a few weeks ago, we had a few movies that we gave legacy votes to that made it into our top 10 for that reason.
And that's fair. Yes.
Star Wars might be the biggest one in this conversation that is most eligible for those legacy points, if that makes sense.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You're right. This is the king of this exercise in a lot of ways. I do think it gets legacy points, no doubt about it. But again, if the exercise here is to not talk about what it started, but the films themselves, I think there are at least 15 other franchise starters that are better than Star Wars.
There are a lot I like more than Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars became a franchise because of A New Hope. It became an event, but it became a religion because of Empire Strikes Back. That second film is what really turned it into a legit franchise in many ways.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And you and I, maybe we're on an island. I don't know. But I think the third film of that original trilogy is also better. In fact, it's not even close as far as I'm concerned.
It's my second favorite Star Wars film behind the Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, it's really, really great. It's top 5 for me as well. I love it. So like that original trilogy, it's excellent. I think its legacy is well established and well earned, but I think a lot of it is due to the two films that follow. Now, I want to be fair. That's probably a little myopic. I'm willing to take some of that back. That original Star Wars for 1977 and what it does for cinema at that time, it was breathtaking. It was game changing. And I do want to acknowledge that. So that's why it gets legacy points. It deserves legacy points. It's earned those legacy points. But I still think as a movie, there are better movies that we can talk about.
To me, I'm going to mention another movie here as a comparison. It's not one that's in my top 10. In fact, I'd be surprised if this movie was also in your personal top 10 for this list. But the way I look at Star Wars A New Hope is sort of similarly to how I look at Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Great movie on its own. Great job setting up a franchise. I don't think it's the best in that franchise, though.
Yeah.
The difference is that many people would agree that Sorcerer's Stone is not the best Harry Potter film.
That's the difference.
It mostly comes down to consensus than anything else. But I kind of see the two movies in a similar way where I think they're both great at setting up their respective worlds and getting you excited about what comes next. But later films perfected what came next. I think.
And I think if a lot of people were being really honest with themselves, I would think most people would agree with what we're talking about here if they could simply get outside of the legacy bubble.
Yeah.
Now, again, the legacy bubble is earned. I'm not trying to completely dismiss it, but if we're just looking at films on their own terms, there are better movies.
Yeah.
And that comparison you bring up to Sorcerer's Stone, and the reason Sorcerer's Stone doesn't carry that same reputation is it doesn't have a legacy bubble. It didn't change the game for Hollywood.
No, Prisoner of Azkaban kind of did.
Yeah, exactly. Again, a few films later. So, So we can keep it in the back pocket, but I do think there are better movies to consider here.
All right, so maybe we'll start here. Maybe we go to and just openly reveal what would be your number one on your list and number one on my list, because then they're most likely going to make our consensus list.
My number one is Alien.
That's my number one as well.
Okay.
Well, okay. Okay. Well, it is my number one with a bit of a question mark, because the movie I have at number two, I don't know if it really qualifies as a franchise starter. And I'm kind of curious to see if you agree or what you might think of with this. The Kid, Charlie Chaplin's The Kid. Is that the start of a Tramp cinematic universe? Because he more or less plays the same character in at least 4 feature films. The Kid, or 5. The Kid, The Gold Rush, The Circus, City Lights, Modern Times. Is that a franchise?
Okay. Oh my God. Oh. Okay.
I'm guessing you weren't prepared for that.
I was not prepared for this, and I don't have an answer. Look, my heart very much wants to say yes to this, but I don't know if that's a franchise. I don't know.
I feel like if it's a franchise,
I want to say yes, but I don't know.
I feel like if it's a franchise, it's because we're saying it's a franchise.
Yeah. Most people probably would not consider that a franchise, but you make a great point. He is essentially playing the same character in those movies. Oh man, I don't know.
I thought of that one pretty late in the game as I was putting this list together. It was maybe 30 minutes before we got on to record this. So it was kind of a spontaneous one for me as well, which is why I brought it up as a question, because I'm still not so sure as well. Like, I'm with you. My heart says, yeah, we should include this. But my head says no.
And that's honestly where I'm at. My head is very much disagreeing. Those films operate on their own on terms, have their own themes and trajectories and arcs. It doesn't necessarily progress a story, although I don't know if any of these franchises are necessarily progressing stories. A lot of them are, a lot of them aren't.
Yeah, but the difference is most of these movies, in fact, I guess all of these movies to some degree, there are narrative threads. There's connectivity there. There are arcs that continue between movies. Mm-hmm. Whereas the movies featuring Charlie Chaplin as the Tramp, those are really more like connected stories and connected anthologies, as opposed to how a franchise operates, which, I mean, to those films' credit, I mean, there was no real franchise back then. It was kind of like the Universal monster movies in some ways. They were kind of connected, but they also kind of weren't. So it was a bit loose. It wasn't really what a franchise was at the time as far as what it became. So again, I don't know.
Yeah,
I brought it up as a question, but if we consider it, that's maybe our number one then.
It changes a lot of this drastically for me if we do consider it. But maybe you actually said the word there. Maybe you nailed it. Maybe it's more of an extended anthology series than a franchise. Yeah. Because like an anthology film that has connective tissue thematically speaking, or perhaps in terms of character dynamic, but it's not functioning as a franchise. It does kind of work that way when you look at the character and the different situations he finds himself in, that ultimately give us different arcs and themes and dynamics, even if it's the same character. So maybe we consider that more an anthology series more so than a franchise.
I'm okay with that. Certainly makes things easier, but I at least wanted to open the door to talk about it, because it certainly adds some variety to the conversation, at least.
Yeah, that threw a big time hiccup in this list for me, because good Lord, I was not expecting that. Not expecting that at all.
Okay, all right. Well, we got that off our chest. But circling back to Alien, yeah, this is my number 1.
Alien is number 1. Okay, so with that out of the way, what do you have at number 2 then?
Looking at this list, I have Mission Impossible.
Okay, Mission Impossible I have at number 10.
Okay.
So I think fair to say in the 10.
In the 10 somewhere. So we don't know where yet, but we'll definitely make a note of this one to place somewhere. Okay. So you have it 10. If I were to go into my number 3, maybe it would be Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl.
I have that at 5. So
okay.
There we go. That was honestly the one film. I guess there's 2 in my top 5 here. I wasn't sure where you would have Curse of the Black Pearl. I'm super excited that you have it that high. But
I think this is one that gets better for me.
I love that film so much.
It gets better for me each time I watch it. Same. It gets better. Well, and I think a lot of that comes down to just the fact that blockbusters were such a different thing back in the 2000s. If anything, the current state of Hollywood makes that movie so much better, which is maybe not fair to the movie itself, because I think it's still doing really interesting things, and I love the backdrop. I actually think it's a very complex movie about anti-heroes and the idea of what pirate lore is. Like, the fact that these characters come together in a way that's kind of antithetical to the way most blockbusters are nowadays. You can argue that none of these characters even like each other all that much.
They don't.
That's kind of bold. That's kind of bold for a franchise like this.
Even the central romance flings back and forth throughout that trilogy all the way through. It's really quite incredible. And that first film, it hits real hard. It's fantastic. And I know that it was technically scored by Klaus Badalt, but let's be honest, that was a Hans Zimmer score through and through.
He's such a protege of Hans Zimmer, so it might as well just be a Hans Zimmer score.
Yeah. And look, I think he's said publicly that he wrote it, he just couldn't score it because he had other commitments. So he has claimed it to be his own, and it makes sense because obviously part of it is in the Gladiator score. So I think we all can acknowledge that it is Hans Zimmer's score, even if he couldn't actually do the composing.
Right.
But that score, man, that's a little bit of what we were saying earlier with Zimmer. That one is a classic top 5 Hans Zimmer score. And one of the best things about going to a Hans Zimmer concert, most of the people there that are not true cinephiles like us, that are just fans of his music. And when I went to see him here in Miami, my guess is most people there are just fans of those movies and wanted to hear that score. That's the one that people wanted to hear the most. And he played it right before they went to intermission, and you could feel the anticipation because the way they do it is they play all of the other cues throughout the scores, but not that main theme. Yeah. They wait till the very end. They wait till the very
smart
end.
About that. They're smart about that.
Legit 4 or 5 minutes of Pirates music that I deeply love. I'm digging the whole thing.
Absolutely.
That I think is great. But the moment that it hits, when that main theme hits after 5 minutes of buildup, it's literal standing ovation. People are literally standing up and applauding, like loud cheers as that theme kicks. Like people they love that score so much, and who doesn't? It is an all-timer.
Oh yeah.
But I say that to say the staying power of that film and the music is quite remarkable. So.
Okay, so
yeah, that's high for me as well.
So we definitely have Alien. We already confirmed that'll be our number 1. Curse of the Black Pearl will be somewhere on our list, and maybe Mission Impossible because we both have it in our personal top 10 somewhere. I will say my current personal top 10 isn't as like concretely ranked as maybe it should be, but I think a lot of these movies are ones we will at least agree on that should be in the 10. Where do you have? Okay, let's get to a few big ones. Let's get some of these out of the way. Where do you have The Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings?
Number 2.
Okay. I would probably have that maybe around 5 or 6 or something like that. So easily in my 10. I'll make note of that. Where do you have Ocean's 11?
6. And then number 6.
Probably number 5 for me. So,
so we're pretty close. See, close there. This is playing out a little bit like our Pixar.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's just figuring out the ranking here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated. I'm assuming somewhere in your 10 you also have Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I have that at 3.
Okay, you got that one pretty high. Okay. That one I'm not opposed to putting all the way up at number 2, unless there's another big one that we're forgetting.
Where do you have it on yours?
Probably around 7 or something like that. Again, like this is just kind of rough. I
mean,
mentioned,
that's fine. I mean, if you have Black Pearl and Fellowship higher, and I do as well. Well, I guess they're in the same mix, but
they're in the same
mix.
Okay,
I'm okay to put those a little bit higher.
I think our consensus, again, for the purpose of this exercise, it's a consensus ranking, right? I think we agree more on those two films than maybe we do on, let's say, Mission Impossible, which I have a lot higher than you, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, which it seems like you have a little bit higher than I do. So maybe for the purposes of this exercise, numbers 2 and 3 as of right now would be maybe a split between Fellowship of the Ring and Curse of the Black Pearl.
Yeah, I think those are the two that follow Alien at this point, and then Ocean's 11, and then probably Raiders, and then Mission Impossible. At least based on the math, that's probably about where we sit at the current moment.
All right, so I have Alien, Fellowship of the Ring, Curse of the Black Pearl, Ocean's 11, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Mission Impossible.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
That's a good lineup.
That's a good lineup. I feel like I've been the one throwing out film names. Do you want to name any out of, that are on your list?
Okay. Yeah, I have another in my top 5, and this skirts the criteria a little bit. It's on the line because there's only 3 movies, but there are a bunch of spin-off shows and comics and such that I still think it qualifies as a franchise, especially because it has also now sparked a reboot. I have How to Train Your Dragon at 4.
That's a big question mark for me. My initial hunch was that I wasn't including it.
It would have been, if we were doing a top 5, that's why I included the criteria very specifically the way that I did, because I think it very much qualifies as a spinoff. The outside of the movies, there's a plethora. Like How to Train Your Dragon is all over the place. When you look even outside of the movies, it is probably the biggest thing DreamWorks has. I don't like Shrek. The movies are huge, but there's not nearly as much outside of that. Same thing with the Kung Fu Panda movies. How to Train Your Dragon is by far the biggest thing they have in that regard. Here's
the biggest thing as to why I might not be opposed to considering How to Train Your Dragon for this exercise. If I completely disregard the spin-offs, which are more or less their own medium in some ways. It's obviously a trilogy. You have 3 animated movies, and then you have a live-action reboot. But unlike most other live-action reboots, this specific one almost feels like an extension of that existing world. So I almost feel like if you were to rank the How to Train Your Dragon movies, you technically have 4 movies in a way, even though they don't function as 4 movies that tell a singular arc. It's in a very different space, considering that it was made by Dean DeBlois, the spearhead of that original trilogy to begin with. It doesn't feel like how like The Lion King for Disney felt when compared to the many other animated Lion King films. That felt like its own complete separate rebranding of an existing thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel the same way with How to Train Your Dragon, the live action remake, which means maybe there are 4 films for this one.
Well, and that's really interesting too, because I didn't really think about it until you put it into those words. But when we talk about full-on reboots, something like Godzilla, for example, the 2014 film is nothing like the 1954 movie.
Right.
Like Rise of the Planet of the Apes is nothing like the original Planet of the Apes.
They're setting up completely new things and
completely new things. The live action How to Train Your Dragon is literally the animated movie, just repurposed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and obviously it's going to end up telling the exact same story. So yeah, I think in a way you could say that it's just an extension of the franchise and less so a reboot. So, yeah, I think that could also add to the argument as well, for sure. I would have it would have been in my 5 if we were doing a separate top 5. I would have had it on my list.
Okay,
100%.
if I'm going to allow How to Train Your Dragon to qualify here, would it be in my 10? I don't think it would, actually. If I'm looking at my 10 as it is, I'm not sure if I would include it.
Okay,
but
I have it at 4. So
But that's the thing. Your weighing of it might allow us to move it into the 10, our consensus 10, given some of the other films I have in my 10 that you might not have anywhere near your 10.
yeah.
So this
Yeah,
could be
we'll
one of
just-
those that we have sitting there until we decide to, push it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how the rest of this plays out, because obviously I don't know what else you have on your list at this point.
Right. I think there's a few others we may have a stronger consensus on before we get to How to Train Your Dragon, but I think we may have some space towards the end to include that.
Okay.
What else is on your current 10?
I have Jurassic Park.
That's nowhere near my top 20.
Okay. I have Godzilla.
That's
1954 Godzilla.
That's in my top 10.
And Die Hard.
Oh, Die Hard. I completely forgot about that one. Now I got to reshuffle some things. Maybe Die Hard is in my top 10.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about that because I tend to only think of 3 films when I think of Die Hard.
Trust me, I totally get that. You want to think that it's a trilogy. We pretend that it's actually just a trilogy.
I'm at the point where I'm at the point where I've convinced myself that that's a trilogy.
Yeah, I'm just what is that word when people are gaslit into thinking that a medium doesn't exist? There's a term for it. I can't think of it.
Manipulated is. I don't know if that's what you're thinking of, but
no, there's a term when we all think that something exists, but in reality it didn't.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
But I can't think of it. It's escaping me.
This is on the tip of my tongue. Is it the Mandela effect? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yes, the Mandela effect. That's it.
Okay.
So we're just gonna Mandela affect everyone into thinking that. What do you mean that there's more than 3 Die Hard movies? There's only the 3. We're just gonna scrap all the other ones from the internet. They've never existed.
Okay, so Die Hard is a maybe for me. I didn't think about that, and I'm still pretty passionate about some of these other films that may be closer to my top 10. So maybe that's another one we kind of put next to How to Train Your Dragon as like okay, if we find room for them towards the end as far as our consensus is concerned, maybe that's what we do.
Okay. Well,
but it sounds like Godzilla is one that we share because I have that in my top 10 easily.
Yeah, I have that at 8 on my list.
Okay, I had that pretty close to that. So why don't we just put that at 7 for the time being? We can reshuffle and re-rank these as we get to our 10. Another one in my 10. I'm not sure if you've even seen this movie, but the Police Story films with Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
That first Police Story would be in my 10.
Okay, I do like that. I probably have that at like 21.
Okay, so that's another example of one that we're not quite fully aligned on. Where do you have Rocky?
I have that at 12.
All right, that one is another one that could crack my top 10. That's like that could be like my number 10 at this point now.
Okay. Yeah, I have that at 12 currently.
Okay, I'm just making note of these so we don't forget about them.
Yeah.
This is a lot harder than our Pixar ranking.
Well, even with Pixar, and I noted that at the beginning of that whole conversation, I knew it was going to come down to those last 3 more than anything else. And this might come down to more than just the last 3, but it does seem as if it's going to be the back half, which might be obvious.
which it always is. It's always the back half. What did you
But
talk about? Okay.
you know, and even with Mission Impossible, we were kind of iffy at that at the beginning, but technically it was both in our top 10s.
It was,
So, same thing with Godzilla. So it's really just going to come down to what these last three. Like,
well, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if there are any others we may have not mentioned yet that could easily have fallen in our respective 10s. I feel like I've mentioned all of them. Or actually,
have you
hold on.
mentioned all your 10?
You know, there's one movie I might have in the back end of my 10 that I know is not going to be anywhere near your 10. In fact, it might not even be in your top 30. Dr. No.
Yeah, that is like, let me say that I do like the film. It is not in my top 20 though.
Okay. I kind of figured that. That one, I think I'm giving that one an edge more so for the this is where I'm trying to have a bit of a dialogue with myself mid episode, because am I giving that one an edge because of the James Bond franchise or because of Dr. No?
Yeah.
And that one I could be misconstruing our own criteria a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really rank anything outside of a top 25, but it would be outside of that.
Yeah.
So
I'm just
maybe
trying
not even in the 30. I don't know, because I'm looking at the bigger list that I collected here.
Yeah.
And
I'm trying to see if I forgot anything. I feel like I know you did a great job putting this list together for this homework, but I feel like I may have neglected a few things that I truly love. What else is in your 10 that we haven't mentioned yet? I feel like that'd be a great way
we've gone through them all.
We've gone through them all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, most of my 10 are here minus Jurassic Park and Die Hard. And potentially How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay. If I were to keep going with some of these movies that would end up in, let's say, my 11 through 20 in some way, I would probably put even more edge to that first Iron Man over some of the ones that we talked about. Yeah, I guess a bit of a hot take here. I like Iron Man more than Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I have that at 17.
Okay. Where did you say you had Rocky again?
12.
I feel like that one is maybe our closest consensus at this point, unless we uncover another one. I kind of feel like the two that are most likely to fill some of those spots are Rocky and How to Train Your Dragon, if I ultimately decide to include it.
Yeah. I mean, I could live with those two. Yeah.
Let me put those in there for now and see how that feels. Maybe Rocky at 8 and How to Train Your Dragon at number 9.
Okay. Where do you have Rocky on your list?
Like around 9 or 10.
Okay.
But given how high you have How to Train Your Dragon, maybe I put it below that.
I mean, either way, I mean, at this point, I don't think it matters too much, but I would definitely, I will at the very least, Die Hard is whatever. I mean, obviously I love it. It's at number 9 on my list, but How to Train Your Dragon is the one that I would fight for the most.
Yeah, I feel like I'm looking at my list and, thinking of your list. I feel like we each maybe are allowed that one film that you would fight for and one that I would fight for. And for you, it's How to Train Your Dragon, it seems like, which I'm willing to concede on. I'm willing to concede just given how unique that live action remake is, which I don't love, by the way, but it does feel like this weird pseudo connection to the existing trilogy, which means I'm kind of willing to qualify, even though we said we weren't considering separate trilogies. I think that's a bit different. I think that
I am considering a lot of other media, I guess, than you weren't, because I do think this is a massive franchise outside of that trilogy. Like I said, if we were doing separate top 5s, all of that would have, like, spin-off movies, spin-off TV shows, all of that counted for me. So easily would have had this in there.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. The one on my list that I would fight for that you didn't have in your top 10 is probably Police Story, the Jackie Chan series.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do like it. I mean, some of the choreography in that film is just absurd.
I know.
It is so ridiculous.
If we can't include some type of like Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton thing as a franchise, this is our closest next cousin in some ways about this type of stunt work as it relates to narrative storytelling.
No, it's crazy. No, it's really great. I mean, just speaking personally, I think there are better movies, but I mean, that film is a lot of fun to watch. It is absurdly fun to watch. And Jackie Chan is out of his mind, just incredibly charming and endearing in that film. So, yeah, I mean, it's still a film I really, really like. And maybe I'm underrating here, to be perfectly honest. I did see it a few years ago, really liked it a lot. And very, very well might be underrating it here. I don't know. I don't have the emotional connection with that film like I do these others. I think that's part of it.
I'm not, and that's the thing. I have it high because of what it's doing as a movie. I'm not necessarily asking for that type of emotional connection to it, but the way that it functions as a piece of filmmaking moves me in a particular way that I think there's importance to that movie.
And I'm including all of that. I'm not necessarily speaking to just overt emotion.
Sure, yeah,
to be clear, but just any sort of connective tissue I just don't have with that. It just kind of lingers out there as a film that I deeply respect and like, but I don't have any sort of pull beyond that with that film at this point. But I haven't seen that film nearly as many times as How to Train Your Dragon or Ocean's 11 or Jurassic Park or Rocky or Toy Story, even Star Wars, Iron Man. And there's obviously there's a lot of others that we haven't even mentioned yet here. So,
yeah.
But so as far as the franchise starter goes, like it's on its own terms, really good movie though.
I'm just trying to see if we forgot anything so glaring that it completely shifts this conversation a little bit. I know. Okay, so Alien, Fellowship of the Ring, Curse of the Black Pearl, Ocean's 11, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Mission Impossible, Godzilla. I mean, those 7, those are solid. Those are solidified. They are not changing. Right now, How to Train Your Dragon, Rocky, just given that you and I have it pretty close on our personal respective lists. And then if you got your pick with How to Train Your Dragon and I can get my pick with Police Story, that kind of rounds out a 10.
That's a 10. Yeah, there it is.
I don't know if I want to necessarily end the exercise here because I want to go through, and I'm sure you do as well. Let's talk about other major franchises that we certainly considered here that have iconic starting points and see if we want to shift this a little bit. Because again, we talked about with Star Wars, the legacy side of things, right? Maybe certain movies have a certain legacy like weight to them that we just cannot disregard. That might change this a little bit.
I guess you and I would just differ on this, but I would make that argument for Jurassic Park. I think it is one of Spielberg's best of that era. It introduced a new style of filmmaking that is still astounding to watch today. Of course, some of the CGI isn't quite what it would become a decade later, but also a lot of it still holds up gloriously. The performances in that film, Spielberg's composition and framing, that patented Spielbergian composition is all over that film. It's incredible. We talked about in our Jurassic World Rebirth review how you get lines like "hold on to your butts." That is a silly line of dialogue if you just think about it on paper, but Spielberg makes scenes and moments like that feel iconic in that film and not tacky and cheap or trite. And I deeply love it. And it's not often that you see Spielberg in that realm of terror and horror often, but you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that based off of that film. You think he's an expert in that field.
Oh yeah.
So like, and I think because of how game changing that film was in terms of digital CGI and how that seamlessly infiltrates practical cinematography. It was the first to do it and still one of the best to do it as far as I'm concerned. So like, I think that legacy, like I would argue the legacy factor of that, much like a Star Wars, is very much the same. I'm not saying that's why I have that at number 7 on my list exclusively, but it's certainly a part of it for sure. I think that film on its own terms just rips. I think it's really great. Like it is far and away the best of that franchise. And I love it. Like,
maybe the thing is that even as someone like myself that saw Jurassic Park at a pretty young age, so in a way it was a formative film for me, it just never was one of my favorites growing up. And I think that's why it just never stuck with me, even though I acknowledge the legacy side of it. To be perfectly honest, this might get me in trouble. I just don't love all the characters in that movie. I think the best characters are the side characters. I think Dr. Alan Grant is more interesting in Jurassic Park 3, if I'm being honest. He's not a bad character in that movie, that first Jurassic Park, but I think that movie is really more of a spectacle thrill ride than anything else. With some very good thematic ideas and some good writing that Spielberg heightens to deliver some great conversational points. I just when I think of Spielberg and working in that realm, I think of how great the characters are in Jaws, for instance, or how great some of the characters are in Close Encounters of the Third Kind when it comes to his other action, almost horror-like spectacle pieces. I just don't think Jurassic Park is that film for him, which is why I don't have it as high as some of these others. That's really the one thing that's holding me back, which I admit is a personal thing.
Okay.
That's
because
just the thing.
I vehemently disagree with all of that.
Right. And I know most people would.
I think the characters are great. I think the thematic messaging is potent and still the best of that franchise by far. And I think as good as any of his early work. So, and again, much like the story of Spielberg, he just continues to innovate, and that is an innovative film in a very different way than something like Jaws. But the influences of Jurassic Park are felt literally 30 years later, which is wild. So I do really love it a lot. I think it holds up gloriously. I still think it's one of his best works of that era. And again, when you're talking about a long lasting franchise, that franchise has been around for 30 years and nothing comes close.
Well, it's still making money. Yeah. It's still making money. I mean, it's still the best of that franchise for sure. Don't get me wrong. I like a lot of other films for this exercise more than it. I like Die Hard more than it. There are a few other films we haven't even mentioned yet that I think I would still take over Jurassic Park. Rise of the Planet of the Apes I like more than Jurassic Park personally. There are a few others here too. What else did you want to highlight? Is there anything else that you wanted to quickly highlight that I think is worth noting here?
In my 11 through 15, I have Batman 1989 is a big one. That's at 11 for me. And Halloween, that original Halloween, I have at 13.
I was thinking about horror, and if I were to include a horror film, I think I'd give the edge to Scream. I mean, I love that first Halloween as well. I don't know. Yeah, those would definitely be in my top 20 for sure.
Yeah. I have Toy Story and John Wick winding out my 11 through 15. And then I also have Star Wars and Iron Man, which I mentioned earlier, Terminator, Mad Max, and Predator round out my 20.
Yeah, I think rounding out my 20 would be Iron Man would be in there. Superman the movie would be in there, the first Superman from 1978. Dr. No would be in there.
Okay.
Yeah, Scream and Halloween would be in there. That gives me up to like number 15, maybe number 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm kind of shifting this mid-conversation, as you can tell. For those watching on YouTube, I have my notes on my phone, so it's not really the best, not really the best utilization from a podcasting medium. So forgive me if things seem a little bit quiet and awkward here.
I mean, I do really like Scream a lot, admittedly, and this is a little bit of what you were just saying about Jurassic Park. subjectively speaking, a lot of these horror franchises are not even close to my top 30. And it's not, I mean, some of it is because of the horror factor. It's a little bit of that police story. I don't have a relationship with these movies all that much. But Halloween is a film that I do really love. We did a review on it years ago at this point. Yeah. I do really love that film a lot. Scream, I do admire, I respect. I really like that film, but it wouldn't crack a top 20 for me. I would take Transformers over Scream.
You're an interesting man, and I love you.
Or a lot of horror movies, for that matter. In fact, I'm making a change on my list. Transformers, I'm putting at 12.
Okay,
just making that change now.
Okay, well, it's not making our 10, but
no,
you know, I'm thinking about this. I'm still not in love with Jurassic Park as much as the general population is. But I think I will say, if there's one film that I'm more willing to concede as far as giving the legacy points to, it would actually be more so Jurassic Park than even something like that first Star Wars. So I'm almost thinking this. I kind of like the idea of us each getting one of those personal picks for this list to round out the 10. You had How to Train Your Dragon. I have Police Story. Maybe we just nix Rocky and put Jurassic Park at number 10.
Okay. I mean, that is totally your call, because I don't want this to feel like I'm gaslighting you.
You're not. It's just
making you feel terrible for being an outlier.
No, it's not that. It's not that at all. It's just I recognize how essential that movie is for not. We talk about Spielberg being so essential when it comes to blockbuster movies and the creation of blockbuster movies, but we don't often acknowledge how he sort of recreated the blockbuster as we know it.
Yeah.
At least 3 different times, right?
At least, yeah.
Jaws in the 70s, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and E.T. in the 80s. And as much as they were Spielbergian, they still had a different aura to them. It created a new emotional sensibility. And then Jurassic Park did it again completely with regard to how visual effects can ultimately be incorporated in movies. So
which is a lot of how we see them today. Like that film, it began an era that is still felt in 2025.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild.
So I will say, I think as far as movies and franchise starters that also spearheaded a movement and also get the legacy points, Jurassic Park and Star Wars are kind of in similar conversations. I'm more willing to give that edge to Jurassic Park for one simple reason. As much as I kind of criticize it a little bit, I still like it a little bit more than Star Wars. So that's the other thing there. So
okay. Yeah, that's perfectly fair. My only question before we kind of put the final stamp on that, how do you feel about Burton's Batman in relation to those two films?
Those two films being what, Jurassic Park and Star Wars specifically?
Yeah. I guess you can throw Rocky in there as well, but since we were just talking about those two.
I think Burton's Batman is a better comparison because it kind of helped spearhead a movement. And again, personally, I think I would take Batman over Jurassic Park and Star Wars. It's a movie that means more to me. In fact, I think I might even take that first Superman with Christopher Reeve slightly over those films. It's just a movie that means so much to me because it is something I latched onto as a kid, and I still do latch onto that for a lot of reasons that other people do. But I don't think they quite carry the same legacy status as something like Jurassic Park does. And a movie like Rocky, I know we originally kind of had that lingering in our collective top 10, but I made room for Jurassic Park instead. I mean, I don't know. I love the Rocky franchise. I really like that first Rocky, but many people would say it still shouldn't have won Best Picture, and I might even agree with that. So there is still a dark side to that conversation that maybe there are other franchise starters to consider here more so, just given what it means to be a franchise starter. That first Rocky was not conceived as a franchise starter necessarily. It was just a great underdog story. And to be fair, many of these movies were not conceived as franchise starters. A lot of them were, not all of them were, but a lot of them functioned in a way that I have to imagine that sequels were top of mind when they were being conceived.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily say that about Rocky.
Yeah, and you'd have to respect the film for that, right? It was simply made as a one-off. It just happened to be this huge success, won Best Picture. Hey, let's make more of these. People tend to like them. And it worked. It certainly worked.
Yeah.
And I guess if you want to throw any legacy points at the film is that it launched the career of its star.
Yeah.
Which gave us a lot more outside of just the Rocky movies, right? Like First Blood is a movie we could also consider for this list.
I quite like that film. I think First Blood is very effective.
I agree. So like, obviously, you know, it has some legacy, but I agree with you. I don't think it has the weight of a Jurassic Park or a Star Wars or even a Batman 1989. But it is a movie I really do like a lot, for sure, which is why it was high on my list. I think I had it at 12. Like, yeah, it's number 12 on my personal list. So
yeah,
I do really like it. But I wanted to bring up Batman as well because I know you love it. I have that at 11 on my list. I don't know if that influences your final thought at all, but something that I wanted to bring up because I think it belongs in the conversation at least.
I mean, like I said, I do like it more than some of these other films we have in our current top 10. But at the same time, the thing with Batman, that first Batman specifically, as much as I do really like it, it is a very flawed movie. Like, it is a very flawed movie by comparison to where other superhero movies might not be. And part of the reason why I love that first Batman is because of what came after with Batman Returns. Batman Returns retroactively makes Batman a better movie. And when I see those two movies together, it makes me like that first Batman more. And I think my love for Batman is not just because I've always liked it and I grew up with it, but learning to love and appreciate Batman Returns so much. And same with you as well. Like, you would agree, it makes that first Batman a better movie. I'm wondering, like, I don't know if I can consider that first Batman for this list because a movie that comes after is why I would consider it for this list now. You know what I mean? It's like, if I try to look at it as a standalone thing, I feel like I can make the argument more for some of these other ones.
And I do very much agree. I guess if I'm able to step outside of myself a little bit, I do wonder if you and I are outliers in that conversation. But at the same time, this is our consensus top 10. It's not what we think the public consciousness top 10 would be.
Oh no. You know, we would be proud if this list made people angry if you and I both agreed with it.
Exactly. Because that would be a very different top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
But since this is our top 10, I think it's okay to leave it out. But I just bring it up as a talking point. I just kind of wonder if you and I are outliers there. But generally, I think Batman Begins. That's a different franchise.
Yeah.
Batman Returns. And how that complements and heightens that first Batman, I think, is incredible. And that's ultimately where I land. I do prefer Batman Returns.
Oh, it's the best Batman movie ever made, if you ask me.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So how about this? This will make me feel good. Let's end this conversation with a top 11, where Batman is number 11 for us. How about that?
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Sure. Well, and we started with a 10, but we decided to throw an 11 because
this way it earns the right of still being included. It's not left out.
It's a 10B. Okay.
It's a 10B. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that as a 10B.
All right. So what's the final list then?
The final list I have here, and let me know if I missed anything or if things need to be re-ranked at all. But okay, 10B Batman, 10A Jurassic Park.
Fair enough. I love it.
Number 9, Police Story. Number 8, How to Train Your Dragon. Number 7, Godzilla, 1954. That first one specifically. Number 6, Mission Impossible. Number 5, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Number 4, Ocean's 11. Number 3, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Number 2, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And number 1 is Alien.
Man, that's a hell of a list. That's an awesome list. Like, I love that.
This
Yeah.
list is proof that, people get
So
sick
good.
of franchise movies. I don't know, sometimes they can be really good.
Sometimes they can be really good, especially when they're kicking off a franchise. That's why, like,
Yeah.
when Brendan brought this topic up as a potential top 5, and I immediately jumped at it. I was like, oh my God, there's so many great movies to consider here. This would make for a great top 5 or conversation at the very least.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really good movies here. And obviously we focused a lot on trying to figure out this top 10. There's so many others that only barely got a mention or that we didn't even mention that I still think are really, really good movies. So
Yeah.
yeah.
We should probably quickly mention
list.
some of those just to give some love to certain films. I know you mentioned movies like Transformers and John Wick and Toy Story and First Blood. We also still really like that First Born Identity. Maybe not the best in
Yeah.
that series, but I think it's very good.
I think it's closer to those sequels than it gets credit for. I really like it.
Certainly one of Doug Liman's better movies. Back when he wasn't quite so much a journeyman director back then. I felt like he had a distinctive style that he kind of lost along the way and just became a director for hire more than anything else. But those early Doug Liman films, including The Bourne Identity, had a very comparable style with each other.
I agree. Yeah, really like it a lot.
Let's see what else. The Terminator.
Terminator. I briefly mentioned that on my list in my top 20. Really like it a lot. I am a big proponent of the Hunger Games, and the Hunger Games is a little bit of that Bourne Identity thing where I think it gets lost in the shuffle due to the two that follow, but I think it's closer to those two than it gets credit for.
Sure.
That I do really like.
That one actually might be my favorite of them all, the first Hunger Games, because all the other ones were more concerned about building a world and building a franchise. That first one is surprisingly visceral and violent in ways I kind of respect.
And incredibly emotional.
Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, I really like that film a lot. Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Again, kind of a similar thing. It like the sequels come out and people rave about those two that follow. And look, Gunn and Moore are really awesome. But I think Rise is closer than those two than it gets credit for.
I do agree with that. I think there's something about the way that film is paced where it almost feels like a 2-hour extended climax that's constantly building. There's actually a good sense of rhythm to that first movie that we don't often talk about. It's not the best of those three, but it might be the best edited of the three, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I like it for those reasons. What else?
One that I really like, this might just be a personal pick, I don't know, but that first Men in Black, I adore.
I love
and
that
is one
movie.
of those movies, like if I'm ever feeling down and I just want a pick me up, that is a movie I go to often.
That's kind of like the Die Hard thing for me, where it's like I keep forgetting that Die Hard is a franchise and not just a trilogy. Men in Black, I keep forgetting is actually a franchise. I always think it's just one movie.
Yeah, I know. It's easy to think that it's just one movie. Maybe it should have been. Maybe it should have been.
I like to think of it as that.
Men in Black. It's Men in Black and Jurassic Park have a lot in common as far as franchises.
They do.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. But at least where Jurassic Park sometimes goes with its sequels have at least sometimes been a little interesting. I can't really say that about the Men in Black movies that followed.
No, I agree. No, I very, very much. But that first one is really, really good.
That first one's great. What a great backdrop. What a great setting.
Yeah.
The Naked
Mad
Gun
Max?
is one of my
Naked
Mad
Gun?
Max. Naked Gun. That first Mad Max, again, it's one of those things where the franchise itself would have been the thing that gave it a leg up. But that first Mad Max, it's not the best in that series. It's not the Road Warrior. It's not Fury Road. It's not Furiosa.
100%. It is by far. It's probably better than Thunderdome, or at least I might take it over Thunderdome. But it is one of the lesser entries, but still one of those movies that I still deeply, deeply appreciate. Like, I love the ambition. I love the weirdness of it. And look, we don't get Furiosa if that film isn't successful at all. And thankfully it was.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I do really like that one. Again, say what you will about the sequels that follow, but that first Ghostbusters is a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
What else?
Some we mentioned horror with Scream and Halloween, but I think that first Evil Dead is worth mentioning as well.
Evil. Yep. A lot of people still talk about that first Final Destination.
Yeah, I like those movies,
again,
but I mean,
not
they're
a
not
franchise for me. But
but
I thought I'd bring it up.
like, as much as I'm technically a fan of that franchise, it's not for this list. It's that first one
Fair
is
enough.
not going to qualify for this list for me.
Fair enough. That first Conjuring, I think, is pretty great, though.
That first Conjuring is very good. Yeah, and
Mhm.
that's certainly a franchise if we consider all the spin-off films like The Nun and Annabelle, for instance, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a gajillion. That franchise might have more films than all of these other franchises.
Actually, that you're
we've been
not wrong.
talking
You're
about.
not, well, I mean, aside from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, obviously.
Aside from Marvel, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I
Well,
think we've hit most of them.
I think we have. I do want to at least speak to a few superhero movies here. I did mention that I really do love that first Superman from 1978. I think I like that one more than you do, based on some of the recent thoughts you had about that rewatch you had there. Means a lot to me. But I know a lot of people listening might be thinking, if they didn't hear our criteria, oh, but what about Batman Begins? That's a trilogy. That's a separate trilogy that only existed as a trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy specifically.
Mhm.
And I guess technically the same thing about Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, although does it not anymore, given Spider-Man No Way Home? Like,
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, because if Spider-Man qualified, given the criteria, that first Spider-Man is heavily in the conversation for my top 10. Probably
Yeah.
cracks it.
yeah.
I do love it, but I don't know. There is some gray area there, right? Because Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man does come back, but it's technically part of the MCU franchise.
Mhm.
I don't know. There's talk about Raimi and Maguire coming back. Do they finally get their Spider-Man 4? I kind of hope they do, only so we could come back and revisit this list.
I really want to see that
Officially.
I want to see Spider-Man 4 so bad.
I know.
That's a vanity project that needs to happen.
I would love to see that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think for this one, yeah, it doesn't qualify at this point.
Yeah, I would say not at this point, but there's more than a 0% chance that we do get to come back and revisit this topic with Spider-Man 4 now.
Anything is possible. Anything's possible.
These days, absolutely these days for sure.
Oh yeah.
Especially, and this is something to keep an eye out on. If I'm right about the DCU and James Gunn wanting to do like a Joel Schumacher-esque Batman instead of Pattinson, and they just keep the Pattinson stuff separate, and that has been pretty successful to this point anyway, right? I mean, the Penguin was a huge success on its own as well. So that might just be a ball they keep in its own little sphere.
Yeah.
If Marvel sees that, oh, look, the DCU is operating great over here, but Batman is also working great on its own over here.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do the same thing with Spider-Man, with Maguire's Spider-Man.
It's like
It doesn't have to be part of the MCU. It can just be its own thing.
Oh, that would be
just
a
wonder-
huge moneymaker. They do Spider-Man 4.
Oh my
They call it
gosh,
Spider-Man
yes.
4. That would be huge. That'd be a huge thing.
Yes. I feel like today, like the MCU has been going on for so long that I feel like it would be easy to market those as separate entities compared to a decade ago, which would have just confused everyone. But now, I think now everyone would kind of get it. I think we would all understand what's going on.
I think so. Yeah.
Make
We're
it
smart
happen,
enough.
Marvel. Make it happen.
I would be first in line for that. I couldn't wait.
Same. We're right there with you. All right. Well, with all of that said, let us know if you agree or disagree with our list. You can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit us up. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can always email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. All right. We do have a couple of reviews this week. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Brendan, that we mentioned a little film called Superman that came out and hit theaters.
Never heard of it.
And maybe I think we're going to talk about it, right? I think that's the plan. Is that
think we
maybe
might
what
as
we're
well.
going to do?
Might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously all we'll do is talk about Zack Snyder during that review.
Exactly, because that's all that the Snyder heads want to talk about.
No, his
Is
name will
Zack-
not even be mentioned during our review.
No, not at all. We are not going to be talking about Zack Snyder at all. Even if I did come around on Man of Steel a little bit, gonna leave that in the past. Gonna leave that behind.
It's not horrible. It is not horrible.
No. But plenty to talk about with the new Superman movie, which we are going to talk about. I think my son Sam is going to join us for his little segment once again. He has loved coming on these shows. And I think my favorite thing about it is that he's starting to get his own little fan base. We've received tweets from people. I got some Facebook messages where people have enjoyed seeing Sam on the show and they can't wait to hear his thoughts on these movies. Honestly, that means more to me than anything else. Like,
adorable. That's
just
adorable.
that people are enjoying him to any capacity is fun. And he's having a ball. He's having a great time doing that.
I can tell. Yeah, it's awesome.
We're also going to do a film. We're going to do a review of a film, it turns out. I'm going to be joined by Megan Laux once again. She's going to join me. We're going to talk about the Japanese film Cloud from Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
Oh, gosh, I want to see this so bad.
Yeah, it is wild. It's a wild, wild movie.
Well,
I urge people to see it.
You know how much I love the film Cure, remember, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Same filmmaker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and he had so Cloud got a release last year internationally, but is getting its U.S. release this year.
Yeah.
He actually had 2 films that came out last year, and I think both of them are getting U.S. releases this year.
Oh, gosh. We have so Soderbergh needs to release his 3rd film this year. Otherwise, it's a tie for which filmmaker wins the year.
Exactly. Who's going to win? Is it going to be Soderbergh or Kurosawa? Who's to say?
Didn't expect it to be between those two.
I know, right? But Serpent's Path is the name of the other film. Both came out last year. Both were incredibly well received, got great reviews, and hopefully we're able to get releases for both of those films this year. But Cloud is making its rounds. It just had its LA and New York release this last weekend or maybe the weekend before. So it's starting to trickle out. And so we are going to give that a review. So those will be our 2 reviews this week, Superman and Cloud. Superman in the Clouds. I think that's going to be the combo title.
That's going to be the combo. Superman in the Clouds. That's a great way to market it. Put that as the hashtag.
Exactly. Hashtag Superman in the Clouds. All right. With all of that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast.